Hello, Andrei. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you here.
Good morning, Francesco. Really good to be here and then really good to see you again and record this for our listeners.
Yeah, I know that you just got back from Spain. How was it?
Spain is great. Spain is a country in which the climate is so good that I'm thinking about moving there every day, considering how the weather is in UK. But hey, every country has their positives and negatives. How was your last couple of weeks?
Oh, last couple of weeks were great, and by the way, I totally agree on the weather. You can't really control it, isn't it? But yeah, it feels nice when you are in a country that where the weather is hot. You get outside, get a good workout, get some sun, bring good energy. My last couple of weeks were great. Went to London, so to the UK, for a wedding, and it was great to connect with people. Like this is so important to for deep health to have like other people around. And I was talking about it just yesterday on the podcast. And yeah, it's so bloody important to have to surround yourself with good people, talk to them, like just have a bit more social life stuff that totally missed during the lockdown. So it was great. And
100%,
then,
yeah.
yeah, I graduated from precision nutrition, which was exciting. And yeah, and then here I'm like, we're super excited to have you here. Because actually, like for the people listening, this is the second attempt to record this podcast. So we had some technical issues. Like one of those technical issues where, last few minutes, the um, was that the mic? Like, oh yeah, my laptop battery is like super crazy, and yeah, I need to fix this. And yeah, we missed that episode, but that it's okay because that gives us a chance to reframe it and really trim it down to 4 actionable steps. So I want you to like start, discovering the topic. So we are talking about injuries, and the last time we talked about making sure that you don't get injured and making sure that you do everything that you can if you're injured to deal with it in the optimal way. But we are going to focus more on the first part. So people who listen us they like to train, so they like to lift weights, they like to get stronger, they like to work on the performance side of their body, and as well the aesthetic side, so their muscle mass, their fat, and their strength. Some people like to train their endurance as well, but definitely they're all people who are active, so they use their body, and they are as all of us prone to develop injuries or overusage or some sort of discomfort in their body. And that's totally normal. Like you look at the current numbers, it's normal that when you play any sort of sports, there is a risk of injury included, right, in the package. So, how do you feel about like just starting, talking about that so that we give a clear picture to the people who are listening about injuries and training?
Well, injury shouldn't be a scary context because if we would be scared about everything that could happen, injury at the base is an accident, something we cannot prevent to an extent. And if we would try to prevent all the accidents that are happening on a daily basis, we would probably just get ourselves in bed and spend 24 hours in bed, and that's not happening. So we are made in a way in which we evolved, and we are able to go through different type of injuries and accidents, and we have the research available to be able to recover and get back to where we were previously. And I think the most important element from where we need to start is that we shouldn't be afraid of injuries. Injuries, as you said, are part of our daily lives. And if we want to build up something which takes time, which takes work in terms of training, um, and the reward is somehow big for you, obviously there are going to be risks as well involved. So we have to consider the highest amount of reward that we can take,
Hmm.
taking into account as well the potential risk. And we can have set up ways in which we can manage those risks. Obviously, that can be done only to an extent, is at the base, as I mentioned earlier, injuries equal accidents, which sometimes are uncontrollable actions which are happening.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I totally agree on that. And like apart from an initial period where maybe you get some sort of adaptation because maybe you're new to a certain program or you haven't lifted weights ever, so like you build muscle, like your performance improve, and that happen like relatively quickly. But then after a while, like your progress stops. Like if you've been training for a couple of years consistently and you have experience, you gain strength, you gain muscles, maybe you gain like 10 kilos of body weight. And like you really need to push your training to further release it those adaptations. So when you push your boundaries, things can get pretty challenging. So you have now a weight that you really have to focus to lift properly. And yeah, it's like many people, they say, when you try a new weight, like it's not gonna look pretty, right? And so I wanted to talk about what we discussed earlier, just privately. Like we came up with 4 steps to really make sure that when you train, you're doing everything that you can to stay away from injuries. So we talk about the first step, and that would be like never train through pain. So like if you do a certain exercise and you have pain when you do it. Like I remember for years I did like a bicep curl, and any sort of bicep curl, I had like a massive pump in my forearm, and the day after my elbow was hurting, but my bicep was fine. So like in that case, I would say, and instead, like a couple of years after, like the lockdown comes, and we only can use gymnastic rings. And for some reason, I train my bicep only with like a sort of a TRX bicep curl, but using rings. Um, no pain, massive pump on the bicep, and I had some great muscle growth on the bicep. So can you guide us a little bit through the importance of exercise selection in relation to reducing the risk of injuries?
Yes, so just to start with the first element, sometimes that's why we have to be very context dependent. Sometimes pain is necessary when it comes to training and injury rehabilitation, especially when we talk about healing of tendons.
So
But
you
in
say is
general,
necessary, a bit of
yeah,
pain. Yeah,
when we talk about tendons. However, in general, obviously, is alright to ask a professional before you train through pain. So you never
yeah.
should train through pain by yourself. If you
Mm,
have some pain, you should consider asking someone for advice. And if they advise you to train through pain, okay, you have the thumbs up, you go for it. But just by yourself is never going to be a good idea to do it, as you said. When it comes to the importance of exercise selection, um, everything that I want to mention this as well, everything that we're going to talk today about is going to be based around training. So there are
yeah.
so many variables outside this scope of training, but we're going to just
Yes.
concentrate on the things related to training. And
Yeah.
exercise selection is a big important element. People think that once they get the training program, they just can get going with the training program. But the truth is that exercise selection and the execution of the exercises is always changing depending on so many other variables. So
Yeah.
some people might be lacking in ankle mobility, which is going to affect the way they perform a squat. Some people wouldn't have the full range to bring their arms overhead, which obviously is going to influence their exercise selection.
Yeah.
So
Massive
despite
one.
the fact that we talked about this and we agreed that a movement analysis is overrated to an extent, it is a pretty decent thing that a good coach can do initially, just to make sure that you take into account those mobility aspects which can be implemented in a program of a client.
Yeah.
Things which, if a person would start by themselves without asking a coach or a professional for advice, it would be pretty hard for them to identify those areas, which for us it might take us a couple of minutes because we have the routine and we standardize the procedure of doing it.
Yeah, totally. So totally, and like just in relation to what you said, like many coaches, they look at their clients first time they see them, and they say, okay, this is like back squat is not good for you, and I think like in that process, like we don't want to make the person feel bad, like that they don't fit into a certain exercise, but we just definitely want to focus on something that doesn't create pain, right? In relation to what you said is important. Like I totally agree with everything you said. Like you don't need to be afraid of feeling pain, because in certain cases, and we are talking about people who are healthy and they don't have pain at the moment, but in case like you had pain on the knee, say, every time you do a back squat, but perhaps you don't have that pain when you do a goblet squat, well, then, like you can play around it. Like you don't have to wait, staying at home until you are completely healed. You can do stuff to like that have a certain degree of pain that allow you to get more healthy. But let's say that we are totally healthy. Like we don't have pain when we do front squat, back squat, goblet squat, leg press. Like our knee is totally fine. Okay. How would you say it's the best, like, or one question that you would ask yourself when you want to train your chest, for example, let's say, shoulder is fine, you don't feel pain, elbow is fine, wrist is fine. How do you choose the exercise? Like, of course, it's gonna be based on your goal, but in relation, like, and I know that you're trying to build muscle and strength. By the way, you look great. Like I follow you on guys. Follow Andrei on his social media. We're gonna link that in the show notes because he does great content. I always look at your content, especially the
Thank
last
you.
few videos, like
Appreciate
on
it.
back train, on forearm train. That was super cool, like on the gym. Um,
Appreciate it.
like, how do you choose an exercise? Like, yeah, how do you choose it? Just to make sure that you are going to be healthy with it, even if you're healthy
Yeah.
now.
So there is a process behind it. Actually, when I did the video about the forearms, I did a full video on how to select an exercise, and everything comes down to the individual. So just to give you
Awesome.
my simple scenario in my case, because it's in my people might feel out there and might connect to it. So every exercise that you add within your program has to have some reasons for adding it into the program. So it's not never
Yes.
the case that you have a chest day, you have a pushing day, press day, and you actually include as many pushing movements as you can. You just need to have a reason for why you are doing it, and that's the way you build up your reasoning behind the process. Just to give you an example, in my case, I had the first day 4 movements. I tried to include a wide variety of movements
Mm-hmm.
so I can get a full body session. So I had the squat, I had the hinge movement, I have a pull movement, and a pressing movement. So behind each exercise, I decided that I'm going to use an exercise which is going to fit my current needs. Let's take an example of a rowing movement or a
Yeah.
pulling movement.
Let's say an
Um,
horizontal row. Like, yeah, you pull with your arms in front of you, you pull it close to your body, like usually like towards your belly button or
yeah,
chest, depending what part of the back you want to train.
so everyone will have a different background and they'll be different individuals. In my case, you said that you never had issues before.
Yeah.
However, I do find that to an extent everyone had some form of issues and they will be able to tell
Mm.
you more about their previous issues. So we are never on a standard level in which I'm perfect. I never had any issues, my training is perfect. I think if you'll talk with that's an assumption, don't believe me for the word, but I think that if you talk with high level athletes or if you talk with bodybuilders, they have quite a lot of time in which they are training for pain
Yeah,
because
man.
of their professional career.
Totally.
Probably you as a swimmer as well, you've been
Oh,
training with,
yeah.
with pain. So that's something pretty normal.
Yeah.
And we have small details in regards to movement ability, which we can take into account to choose exercise selection. My own example, pulling movement, I prefer to do a single arm pulling movement purely because my scapular control and glenohumeral rhythm, which is the movement of the humerus in rapport to the scapula, is a bit
Mm.
off on my right side. Again, this is not that it might actually create pain in the future, but from a muscle connection perspective, that's going to affect me the way I develop my muscles. So I don't want to have one side bigger than the other, and I don't want to develop further asymmetries purely because aesthetic is really important for me, being in the world on one side in the world of bodybuilding, as I know it is for you and for our listeners.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, I totally can relate to what you said. Like, especially in the elite performance world, like you're gonna deal with injuries or discomforts. Like there is no way that you will become elite at something without practicing the sport. So you're going to have to practice it a lot, and that means a lot of repetition, and that means a lot of usage, and so that you have to do everything that you can to make sure that you're safe. So if I could chip in on that first step of the exercise selection, like And I think you mentioned two big things: is exercise selection and how you do them, right? So you want to make sure that your technique is on point. Like I was just reminding myself of this this week, because it's a deload week. And I'm like, this is only 5% lighter than what I used last week. So I'm not trying to elicit any new adaptation. I'm just stepping back slightly, but not too much. And man, even if you drop the load for 5%, that means like if you're doing 100 kilos on a certain exercise, that you do 95. So it's not like such a big difference, but that allow you to really manage it and feel it in the right place. So really, really big one on the exercise selection. If I can chip in, like you definitely want to have exercise that are specific to your goals, so that are producing the outcome that you're looking for. In the safe way, in the safest way. Like you need to feel like you can't feel like you are in the last few reps really risking your health to have like a muscle adaptation, right? You need to be safe. I want to feel safe. So that's why I leave always a lot of repetition in reserve when I do exercise like squats or when I press heavy stuff over my head. I'm never going to push it to failure, right? I'm never going to sacrifice my health or my safety for my training. So yeah, and moving on, like we talk about the second step, which it's creating stability and connection. Can you guide us a little bit through what do we mean by that?
So I think the whole point of this step is starting from something which we usually have in the gym, Bosu ball. So
Yeah,
Bosu ball is an exercise which a
big
lot
one.
of people are using in their rehabilitation program, and they are creating unstable surfaces. And I've been reading about this for quite a lot of time. And previously, now we talk about people which have no injuries, but within the rehabilitation program of people which had injuries, this was like a must. Everyone was using it,
Yeah,
and we kind of get to a point now when we realize that it's not really specific to what we do. Like you never walk on unstable surfaces.
no, never.
You might be walking with asymmetries in regards to how you load your body. So if you do a farmer's carry, you load one side more than the other, but
Also.
it's not really specific to how we work. And in order to build up results, especially in the resistance side of it, if you cannot concentrate on connecting to the muscles and create stability, your movement will have to suffer as a result. And when load is pretty high, you get an accumulation of factors. Lack of stability is not going to help, and it can be one of the principles ways of creating an injury,
Yeah.
especially when you train hard.
Yeah, totally. And like I don't know about you, like on this one, I like I'd love to discover a little bit more, but just because of my experience and the first I can tell you this, like I did bench press for training my chest for ages, and then lockdown starts. I buy myself those two famous gymnastic rings, and I jump on the first session, and I think, okay, I'm big, a big guy, strong, so I'm just gonna do thousands of dips. I'm gonna get bored easily. Man, I couldn't do more than 3 sets of 5. Why? Because my hands were all shaky, right? And I was like, why am I shaky? Is it because I'm weak, or is it because I'm unstable? So that really challenged my shoulder stability. I was
Yeah.
unstable. I was fucking weak. It's not that my rotator cuff was weak. My muscle in the rotator cuff were developed, but this is about creating connection with your brain and really connect to the shoulder and creating stability at that joint. Now, when you do that, for even if it's for just a couple of weeks, man, my chest developed so much. It was like such a fresh stimulus for my chest
Yeah.
that I really think that is a good idea to combine the two. I don't think it's like, oh my God, I need to do the rings dips and my bench press is going to explode. Or like if I usually train with ring dips and I train a bit of bench press, my ring dips are going to explode. No, I don't think it's like either or. I think you can have both. I think you can have a period when you do one, when you practice one more, when a period when you practice the other more. But how do you feel about that? Like, by creating instability, can we get like a muscle stronger, better, and safer, possibly, or not
Yeah, I think
necessarily?
I think 100% we can. So when we talk about this aspect, it can be easily misunderstood, because when we talk about stability, we have to consider getting back to exercise selection. We talk about open chain exercises or closed chain exercises. So if you are
Mm.
working on your squat, it will be pretty bad to have the floor unstable, because that's gonna
Yes.
increase the risk of injury. But when we talk about exercises such as the one you mentioned, in which you are doing dips on the rings, that's a completely different scenario where lack of stability can help on muscle activation. So we have to be pretty careful in the way we present stuff.
Yeah.
But indeed, stability and lack of stability has to be dependent on the exercise selection, because in some cases it might be tremendously helpful and in some cases it might not. And just to while you were talking for this, I did in the gym I have a membership currently.
Yeah.
There is a machine which allows you to go through is a chest press,
Yeah.
which allows you to go through adduction in the same
Nice.
time.
So towards the
And
end, you can get your upper arm like
yes,
towards the mid side of the body. Yeah.
exactly. And when you're pushing towards the midsole, you feel the pull, the the machine is pulling towards it, so is pulling in towards you. So you are
Oh,
pressing, and it's pulling out as well.
amazing.
So
So
it,
you really
it
have to.
creates, yeah, it creates pressing and abduction in the same time.
Yes.
And initially I never used that,
Yeah.
because I was like, what's the purpose of this? Like, I can barely do 40-50 kilograms on it. I can get on a Smith machine and load it. But I done it a couple of days ago. Actually, I think it was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I went with low weight, and I felt exactly what you were mentioning. That lack of instability creates the need of firing the muscle in different way, and
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable the level of pain
Yeah.
to an extent I felt when I when
Yeah.
I finished a set, and the load was minimum.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And like many people, they just focus on pressing. Like you mentioned earlier, you can definitely divide your program in like pressing, pulling, squat, hip hinge, totally. So you have a nice and balanced training. But on the other side, like you need to as well think. Really, that's why bodybuilding taught me so much. Even like from a mindfulness perspective, because it taught me to be present and to think ahead. About what the direction of the program is. There is an horizontal pressing. Absolutely, you are pressing something heavy far away from your body with your arms. Great to work on your chest, tricep. Depending on the line of action, it can work more upper or lower chest, but it's or like more the front delt or more the chest. Okay, cool, amazing. But really connect with the exercise. Full range of motion might means that you think about bringing your hands close to each other so that you can really connect with your chest, and make sure that is actually your chest responsible for moving the weights, because your body is great at adapting, isn't it? Like you can just press by having a little bit more support from your shoulder joint, which it ain't gonna grow. Like it's not going to grow. Like your joint needs actually more time to get stronger and to become more stable than your muscle. Like it's not so easy to adapt our joint. I think it requires more work. But like in that moment when you're doing a press, you're focusing on getting a bigger chest, a stronger chest. So I love what you said. I think it's a big one. Awesome. So like if we could move on, like what's the step number 3? Like we talk about the warm up as a way to like address weaknesses and like prime our body for movement. So
So we relate to exactly what you said, being mindful and being aware of the
mm,
of the current scenario and the situation that you are in, and we can use warm up and the movements that you use within your warm up to fit your needs. We talked about this earlier as well, and there are some people out there, some influencers, which talk about the fact that you don't need warm up,
yeah,
because they talk about the fact that when you start to run after a bus, you don't need to warm up before. But that's an interesting
yeah,
example, if you ask me. Is an interesting example, and I put some thought into it. But you realize, you need to build up on what you want to do during a session, especially if we talk about the resistance session. You cannot jump straight into 80%, 10
yeah,
reps max. That's not the case. Your
yeah,
muscles need to get activated before, and we don't talk about that, activation in which you use the resistance bands and you do walkouts. We talk about specificity in terms of warm up. So if you're squatting 100 kilograms during your main set, well, build up to those 100 kilograms. Don't get into bar and then overload the bar with 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, totally, Andre. I totally agree. I wanted to let you finish on that, but your position is exactly like how I think. Like you can go and sprint for take a bus without necessarily getting injured, and also like that's the beauty of feeling in shape, that you feel like your body is capable of performing at any time. Right, you are able to move freely, and you can really see like the effect of your training on your life. Like, hey, I need to carry like 2 heavy grocery bags. I'm not gonna warm up, I'm just gonna pick them from the car and go. And like sometimes I load myself as much as I can because I want to challenge like my strength and not like just get stronger at the gym and then be like a little bit
no
my
bags
girlfriend is
left in the car, isn't it? When you go to the shopping with Leah, I guess no bags left in the car. You just pick everything up. You don't want to
yeah,
come the
really
second
challenge my
time.
grip strength and like and that's the beauty of it. Like, and this is exactly like how I think of warm-ups. It's just an occasion to move freely, practice free movement, and to address and discover weaknesses that you might develop, that you might not have today, but you might develop. So if you train hard and you train hard consistently, good for you. I respect you. Like it's really, really like interesting and inspiring for like a discipline perspective. You're going to need periods where you train less. We know that from the fitness fatigue module. Like we can't push our body constantly. We need to include weeks where we actually detrain. But as a warm-up, never skip a warm-up is a fundamental part of the workout, in my opinion. Like you just have 10 minutes to move, and maybe like you move freely and like you can discover more about your body. And hey, those ankles are not getting more mobile, and they're getting more tight. My glutes are not firing properly. Why I'm not able to do a shrimp squat? Maybe I need to work on my like step up and really connect with the glutes in that like stretch position. Like it's an opportunity, in my opinion, for beginner, intermediate, and advanced lifters and people who just like to move their body to see where they're at and to address those weaknesses. Because you can investigate. You're like, oh, my elbows is always hurting. Why is that? Is it normal? Can I change something in my program? Not really. Okay. Did I deload? Yes. Awesome. Cool. In the warm up, just spend time like discovering that. It might means that you have like a part of the forearm that is not so strong, or a part of the forearm that is actually tight and needs a little bit more blood flow. So just see it as an opportunity to address old and future weaknesses.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, fully agree
Yeah.
with this one. So never skip your warm up, guys and girls.
Yeah, also, and you can also have like a 5 minutes free practice when you're practicing a skill. It could be a handstand, it could be like a pull-up, it could be like just a single arm hang, it could be like a plank or a particular core exercise, even something that you saw on Instagram that you would like to try, just try it. Try it in the warm-up. Doesn't have to be all your workout. You don't have to slam, like to butcher your body with like crazy exercises, but you want to give it a try. Maybe you feel like that exercise help you connecting with a muscle that you never connected with, for example.
Yeah, and the easiest way to see is because obviously warm up is going to be affected by a wide variety of factors. If you have only 30 minutes to train, you're not going to spend even 10 minutes on the warm up because it's not going to be worth it. So everything has to be taken into account depending on you as an individual and your time availability. So the way I think we structure this in quite a lot of times is, especially me, is you had no pain, you are fine to go, you don't have time to do warm up, make sure that you warm up the exercise that you're going to train. When it comes to having previous niggles and pain and injury, that's where things can become a bit more complex in terms of warm up, and that obviously has to be related to what you want to try. If you as you said, if you saw something new and you want to give it a try, you're not going to add it into the main lifts. Just give it a try with the warm up. And
not a big deal. And related to what you said earlier about the bus, I think like we can't use it as an example. Like people say, yeah, but when you sprint for a bus you don't warm up. Cool. is that your sprint, like the sprint of your life, or the sprint that you really want to use to get better, or like to produce some sort of adaptation or outcome? No, you just sprint because you have to, right? But if you time that, like if you warm up properly and focus on that sprint, like you would run faster. So if your goal was to run faster by sprinting, like you would probably have to warm up to have a better performance, and just try it on yourself. Try to do a back squat without a warm up and really do 3 sets of 10 as heavy as you can without getting to failure, leaving a couple of reps in reserve. You'll have a certain feeling. Don't warm up, like go and do a deep warm up, like deep, I mean, like properly done with a good sequence, a sequential and logical sequence, and then do the same squat again. You probably feel like you can get stronger easily and more freely. And you'll probably enjoy it more because you're like, oh yeah, I'm actually capable, more capable. Have a better mobility, I have a better control at the bottom. I can go really ass to grass. So I think it's very big.
I
And the
think
people,
one,
yeah,
yeah,
they
go
need
on.
to understand the differences between the two. Like, yeah.
Yeah, one, like as you said, like warm up can tremendously affect your performance.
Yeah.
I used to do warm ups which were not as specific, and as soon as I realized the importance of making warm ups specific and for clients as well, I saw like a massive increase in performance. So
Yeah.
I have a currently a method which probably you are aware of. It is used in powerlifting as well. It's just about building up onto the main set, and what I like about this is they have a last set of what's called activation, which is pretty much one repetition, but
Yes.
is more than 100% than what you're gonna do. So if you're gonna lift 100 kilograms for 10 reps, then on the prior warm up set before your first working set, you go to 105 or 110 kilograms, and you're just doing it for one rep as an
Yeah.
activation.
Yes.
Unbelievable. When you get into the first set, have 2 days, one go straight or just build up to there and just start with the 100 kg as the first one, and the other one have a warm-up set with 110 kg, so about
Yeah.
5-10% more than what you do. When you get into the first set, the rate, the exertion perceived during the first set is unbelievable smaller, purely because
Yes.
you used a bit more on the last warm-up set.
Yeah, and I think like that's because of the neuromuscular activation, isn't it? You
Yeah.
go heavier than what you will use. You're like, "Ah, how am I gonna go heavier?" Well, you're just going to do one rep. So if you're doing, Andre was saying, sets of 10 with 100 kilos, you definitely can do one rep with 105 or 110, probably 120 as well or more. But you don't need that. You go 110, 105, you just do one rep and you do it properly. Now, when you put 100, it's going to feel light. Yes, you have to do 10 reps, so you will have to push harder in that set, but I totally agree. I tried that myself. The beauty of it is exactly that the first set you feel like capable, in control of the weight feels light. The downside of it, I think if you don't do it properly, it can take too much time. But you don't have to do like 10 sets of one rep. You can just do one as like the end of your warm-up sets and just move on
Yeah.
with your work.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. So we talk about the importance of never training through pain and exercise selection, the importance of focusing on stability and connecting with the muscle, being present, feel your muscle working, and the importance of warm up. If we could give the last step, so step number 4, we talk about the importance of filming ourselves and how challenging it is for us coaches that we work out in a commercial gym. We don't have like a crazy gym in house. So like, what's the importance of like just assessing our video, like our workouts in terms of reducing the risk of injuries?
I think the one, in my opinion, my subjective opinion, the one which is pretty important here is consistency of movement. As
Yes.
we talked about previously, when we move a weight in a specific way for 10 reps and then we change a bit the positioning and we might even want to increase the weight, that's where you are a bit inconsistent within your training, because
Mm.
again, exercise selection and execution, and
Hmm.
pretty much on this one, when it comes to recording is execution of the exercise, you want to be really careful from the first rep until the last repetition. And I saw a lot of good coaches out there which will just go for the check-ins, and they will actually, get the drink and they will just look at each repetition at the time. The first one, they'll compare the first the first one with the last one. So I think it's about what bodybuilding teaches to an extent is about discipline, and the second one is the consistency. And the consistency doesn't come only from nutrition and training, but it gets us closest to consistency of execution of each repetition.
I love it. I think this is such an important point that many people miss, because they're like, no, you need to train hard. Okay, let's define that a little bit more, because you need to train hard. But when I look at your last rep, it doesn't look like the same exercise that you were doing on the first rep. So, it's great to record yourself to be able to understand that, because without a coach or without a friend who look at you training, you might not be able to recognize that. And yeah, totally. Like, I think the discipline, like in bodybuilding, teach you that even if the fatigue is there, fucking hell, the weight is heavy, you did like 9 reps, you want to go for 10, but you really feel like when you get to the end of the range of motion, you feel like it's your struggle, like you feel like you're really challenged to close that rep and to maintain a good technique. So you feel like your body wants to adapt and like compensate, because you have such an accumulation of fatigue, which we can get into that. But like you just feel tired, right? You feel like, yeah, all the muscle are burning and your body want to change technique, and you have to fight so hard to maintain a good technique. And that's where an experienced lifter, I think, can do better than a beginner, because a beginner would just be like overwhelmed by the fatigue, and his body, like depending on how fatigued he is, whether if it's like 1, 2, 3, or 4 repetition shy of failure, it's going to be hard to maintain that technique. And but it's very important. I think like many people increase a lot their risk of injury and usage, because they push that extra set regardless of their technique. Now the technique changed, the body adapt so that it can preserve some muscles. And what are, like, is it true that like when you do those 2 extra repetition, like you're basically increasing like exponentially the stress on your joints, and then
Well,
therefore as well the risk of injury? Would you agree on that? Because this is something that I've always like thought. And
I think it's going to be again depending on the context. So you might be as much as it might not be, depending on that
yeah,
on a specific case. But
yeah,
as you mentioned, like, let's be honest, resistance training is one of the safest methods of training out
yes,
there, and the only way, honestly, in which you can hurt yourself during lifting is if your ego is too high. The most injuries I saw lately, and probably you've been aware of some of them as well. Some of them as well. Sorry, there was a guy who teared his pack during an incline.
fucking hell, yeah, I saw that video.
I
Is he
think
like on Larry
he's
Wheels?
yes. So
Wow,
he's like he's younger than me. Like, unbelievable strength, unbelievable physique. He's amazing. Yeah. So I'm not like hating. Unbelievable work. He's an athlete, but I think that was related to ego. You
yeah,
have to understand what you can take and what we do through. The way we periodize things. We create progressive overloading. So
yeah,
just showing a one-off on Instagram.
yeah,
And if you can control, and people out there can control their egos, they shouldn't have issues on those last few reps.
yeah.
What do you think about this?
I totally agree on that. Just it links back to what we were saying before, that if you push your body, at some point you might have to deal with some sort of usage, or just discomfort. And I totally agree with you as well, that when you say, it's not like black or white. That the first time that you do a squat, maybe you've been using a great technique all the time, and now you're training like to push yourself a little bit more, and you do 1 rep where you lift your heel off the ground because the weight gets heavy, and like you're not going to necessarily get injured
Yeah.
for one mistake. But I think like an experienced lifter, and like we can say as well a better and a smarter lifter, is able to understand that, is able to say, okay, I make a note, written note, not just mental, because I'm not going to remember that next week. I do so many lift, like I train 5 days a week and I don't remember what I did last Tuesday. I need to have a program. I need to have it written on a piece of paper. I use my app, so I leave a note on that set, and I say, okay, last rep was shit. So,
Yeah.
just leave it, leave the next week, even if I actually got stronger, I'm going to practice that weight. I might decide to practice that weight, or maybe to move forward and to do a little bit heavier on the first set and go back to that weight on the second set. But it's, it's important to be able to recognize if it was actually a good set technique wise, or if actually I push a little bit too much, and when I pushed under a lot of fatigue, my technique changed. That might not
Yeah,
be like the end of the world, but it's definitely a sign that your body like needs some sort of control on that. You need to focus on your technique, or perhaps work on activating and firing and strengthening particular muscle groups. It depends by the case.
I
But
think
yeah,
that
totally agree.
one thing here that you're probably talking about as well as I'm thinking of is differences between muscle failure and mechanical failure. And in
Yes.
the bodybuilding world, you don't really need mechanical failure. Like you need muscle failure, because if you want to get the muscle bigger, you want hypertrophy, you want sometimes to get to that level of muscle failure. I'm not saying it's necessary, and I know you don't agree with this, so that's going to be a debate on another podcast maybe. But like you definitely don't want mechanical failure. And when people are just going after their logbook, and as you say, sometimes we just look at the what we did last week, we don't take into account the quality of what we did last week, but we take into account only the quantity. So if you are just after getting that quantity of sets and weights, and you don't pay attention to the other aspect, which is the quality of reps in regards to what muscles you go activated, is not going to be only maybe an increased risk of injury, potential risk of injury, because again, it depends, but it's not going to be efficient and proactive for your own progress in terms of muscle building. Because last a shaky rep, in which you try to use your quads, but you actually use your hamstring, and you push through the shoulders and the thoracic spine, is
Yeah.
not gonna it's not gonna be efficient.
Yeah, and I think we agree on this one as well, even if we might disagree on failure. It's I use failure, but I will never use failure on a back squat. So I use failure with the right context. So when it's safe to get to fail at, I don't think it's a good idea to fail on a compound exercise where that failure means really increasing your risk of getting injured, like properly, like to get stuck under a bar and to get injured in a bad way. So when the external chances of getting injured is high. And I totally agree with you that to push your boundaries, like you need failure sometime, but it could be at the end of a mesocycle, it could be only on particular exercise, it could be only on one set of a particular exercise. So there are many ways, to use failure to our advantage and to be safe. Sometimes failure is fun. Like I'm like, okay, let's see how many reps I got with this weight. I've been working on it for 4 weeks with 50 kilos on a certain machine. Let's see how many reps I really have, and it's a good challenge mentally as well.
I
Yeah,
I think you are doing great out there through the way you show stuff, because just by looking at your physique, like a lot of people, which I kind of categorize you as being in the same category as them. A lot of them talk about training to failure, and that might be sometimes scary for the people out there which start to train. And I really enjoy the fact that you're promoting the other side, in which it does fully work, with repetition in reserve, and you don't have to go to that maximum point. And considering that you train like that and you look like that, that's for me unbelievable to an extent. And people out there should really look into how you are programming things, and people should maybe try to work with you, because I think you are really good in planning and designing of programs, because not a lot of people are able to keep repetitions and reserve and still build up the amounts of muscles that you build.
man,
That's out off
I
topic. That's
really,
off topic.
yeah, I really appreciate that. And totally, like I think like it's a big one. Failure is a highly debated topic, but we can get into that possibly in a future conversation. As always, we double up the time that we plan to record this podcast, but that's good, because we want to, like, we really care about providing actionable steps to the people who listen to this podcast, so that they can be safe, right, and they can enjoy their lifting. Hey, Andrei, do you have any like project you want to share, or like anything related to your business? Where can people find you? I'm gonna share everything in the show notes, but is there anything else that you would like to mention?
I'm fine right now. If anyone wants to just follow my posts or just get into contact, ask any questions. More than happy to get back on Instagram, AAS Physical. You can find me there, and yeah, let's take it from there.
So great, guys. Follow Andrei AAS Physical on Instagram. He does great work. Well, Andrei, I'm going to send you a big hug. We will definitely talk again in the future about muscle failure for hypertrophy and strength. That'll be a very interesting discussion. But from Coach Andrei and Coach Francesco, ciao, ciao.